If my mother were to commit murder and get arrested and go to jail, I would be very, very sad. I would find it perfectly understandable that she went to jail, why she went to jail, the justice behind it. I would know and be able to comprehend the reasons. I would still feel my heart breaking, along with a torrent of other emotions, none of which I can describe as good or happy. In contrast, if I were to go to heaven and she to hell, I would be perfectly happy. That is according to Jesus Freak 777 anyway. In his video in which he answers questions from viewers, he explains that if his daughter were to go to hell and he to heaven, he would still be perfectly happy. He would understand God's perfect justice and enjoy some wondrous happiness, not his exact words, but close enough, in spite of the certain knowledge that his daughter was experiencing tormented and ceaseless suffering until the end of time. Even in understanding the justice behind punishment visited upon someone I love for some crime, I would not be able to take solace in that understanding, let alone find happiness. Honestly, the idea of happiness found in justice is somewhat repugnant to me, and I'll give you an example. I recall being in a room full of people when the tanks rolled into and the bombs dropped upon Iraq. Everyone cheered except for me. Even if I were to grant that this was a justifiable and judicious action, I don't think I could find joy or happiness in the action. If I were to find out that, say, Bin Laden was killed, a man who, by all accounts, is very, very bad, I would consider that to be very, very good. But I don't think I could describe it as happy. I don't think that happiness and joy are accurate descriptions of my feelings on justice being served in his case, or anyone's case where I consider them to be bad, or problems for society. Good, certainly, but I don't always equate good with happy. And honestly, this idea of happiness found in this sort of justice sounds kind of sadistic. But the question still remains as to whether or not you can even feel emotions in heaven. I recently came across a theist whose name completely escapes me now, who claimed that the soul is your mind and emotions. I found this a very curious statement, as if all the activity in the brain is just the random gibbering of a few neurons. We're just a ghost in a machine. Why is it then that this ghost fucks up so often? So many people need to take medication to remain sane and functioning, to keep them from actions and thoughts that most would consider outside the normal. I myself have issues with anxiety and irrational fear. Is that my soul? If my soul is my mind, it must be. My bizarre and irrational emotions that cause me to avoid social situations are actually the emotions and mental state of my soul? Why is it that there are chemicals to alleviate me of these fears? In discussing this with theists, I've come across several explanations, but one of the more prevalent ones seems to be that your body is like a stereo system, and your brain is like the radio tuner. Your soul is the radio signal. I guess that makes Paxil the chemical equivalent of putting foil on antennas. But still, we know that brain damage can entirely alter someone's personality, their emotions, their mental state. Why would God create such imperfect brains to interact with the soul? I mean, could I really be held accountable for my sins if they end up being a technical problem with the mechanics of soul-to-brain communication? And whether or not the soul carries emotions along with it, at least Christians can be certain that up there in heaven everyone will get along just fine, right? Of course, if you were going to get together here on earth, that's a whole other issue. Just check out the One Master get-together that was recently attempted. Part of its self-destruction, it seems, was the disagreement on what it means to be a Christian, what it takes to be, scare quotes, true Christian. Maybe there are as many paths to God as there are denominations, in which case, does that make the laws of God less set in stone and more written on paper with a pencil and a very large eraser handy? Maybe there are very strict rules for getting up there, with only one path. I imagine a sign outside the pearly gates, "Welcome to Heaven, Population 10. I don't want to make it seem as though the picture of heaven that's been painted for me was free of disagreement, but it never seemed more important as to whether or not to play air hockey or foosball today. I've heard more versions of what it takes or means to be a Christian than there are denominations, from simply accepting Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior to cherry-picking various commandments and laws. God, of course, understands why we can't stone people anymore. There are earthly laws against it, after all the way up to following the Bible to the letter. This all sends Pascal's wager into seemingly incalculable numbers, and further complicates the veracity of theistic certainty that theirs is the one true path. Your heaven, to me, still seems woefully untenable and, well, kind of fucked up. Imagine there is no heaven. Above us, only sky. I thank you for that sentiment, Mr. Lennon, but I don't need to imagine. I just have to open my eyes. Peace.